The first thing I remember is the cold. Not the kind that bites your skin, the kind that seeps through it right into the bones. I had fallen asleep on the weathered wooden planks of Pier 29, the briny air clinging to me like regret. When I woke, there was warmth draped over my shoulders, thick, heavy, and smelling faintly of salt water and cedar. And standing in front of me, watching with a gaze both guarded and strangely tender, was the sailor. "Keep it," he said, voice deep and rough, as though it had scraped against storms. You were shivering. I should have asked for his name, but my lips stuck to silence. My world had been a steady rhythm of loneliness, and something about this man's presence dangerous, magnetic, felt like stepping into uncharted waters. The harbor that evening was quieter than usual. Fishing boats bobbed gently, ropes groaning against cleats. Somewhere, a gull screeched like it had something urgent to confess. I sat there, wrapped in the Alpha's coat, trying to steal glances at him without getting caught. His hair was the color of wet ash, cropped short, but unruly in the way wind loves to tangle. His eyes were steel gray, not cold, but deep, like a storm that hadn't decided whether to break or pass. He didn't stay. He simply nodded once and walked away, his boots thudding against the pier. Yet I could still feel the ghost of his warmth long after he'd gone. For days, I kept returning to Pier 29. Part of me told myself it was because I liked the solitude, the hush between tides, but truth whispered otherwise. I was waiting for him, and on the fourth evening, as the sky bled into indigo, I saw him again. He didn't act surprised, though his mouth twitched like he wanted to smile but wasn't sure if he was allowed. You again, he said. Me again, I answered, pulling his coat tighter around me. Guess I owe you something. You don't owe me anything. But the way he looked at me like he was trying to memorize the shape of my face made it feel like maybe I did. His name was Elijah Kane, an Alpha sailor stationed in the harbor town for the season. I learned he'd grown up by the sea, that his father had died in a storm, and that he'd sworn to never fear the water again. He spoke in pieces like a man who measured every word before letting it go. But sometimes, when the wind caught his voice just right, there was music in it. I was Jonah, just Jonah, the Omega who'd come here because I needed to disappear for a while. My world before this was full of closed doors and whispered pity. I didn't tell Elijah all of it, not yet. One night, as the harbor lantern swayed, we shared a bench at the end of the pier. He told me about sailing through squalls so violent the deck tilted at 40 degrees. I told him about watching the sun set over empty streets in a city where no one knew my name. Somewhere between his stories and mine, the space between us narrowed. When his hand brushed mine, I froze, not out of fear, but because I'd forgotten what that kind of touch felt like. You're cold, he murmured, and this time, instead of his coat, he offered his hand. I took it. That winter storm came without warning. The harbor was chaos, ropes snapping, boats thrashing. Elijah was out at sea when it hit, and for 2 days the world was just rain, wind, and my pulse pounding in my ears. When the storm finally passed, I found him on the pier, soaked, exhausted, but alive. I didn't mean to cry, but I did. He didn't say anything, just pulled me close, letting my cheek press against his chest where his heartbeat thudded, steady and real. It wasn't until weeks later, when the first hints of spring touched the air, that I realized the truth. This wasn't just a fleeting harbor romance. It was an anchor in the drift. The day he told me he'd have to leave at the end of the month, my chest hollowed out. I'd never been good at holding on to things, people least of all. But Elijah didn't let me sink into silence this time. Jonah, he said, cupping my face in his calloused hands. I'm coming back, and when I do, I'm not letting you go. I wanted to believe him. God, I did. But believing was dangerous when you'd spent a lifetime watching promises dissolve like salt in water. The night before his departure, we walked along the harbor. The moonlight made the water silver, the waves whispering secrets to the shore. He stopped suddenly, pulling me to face him. This, he touched the coat still draped around my shoulders, is yours. Always was. And so am I. When he kissed me, it wasn't soft or hesitant. It was the kind of kiss that made the world tilt, the kind that tasted like everything you'd been too afraid to want. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was drifting anymore. The morning Elijah left, the harbor felt wrong, too still, too hollow. I stood on the pier as his ship eased away, his figure a dark silhouette against the growing light. He didn't wave. I didn't either. It wasn't because we didn't want to, it was because the weight in our chests made the simplest gestures too heavy. Days bled into weeks. Letters came, not often, but enough to keep me breathing. They carried the scent of the ocean and words that felt almost like touches. But distance has a way of testing even the strongest of promises. One evening, word spread of a storm far off the coast. It was big, the kind that could turn steel into splinters. My gut twisted. I told myself Elijah wasn't there, that his ship was safe, but fear doesn't listen to reason. For 2 sleepless nights, I paced the length of the pier, the Alpha's coat wrapped tight around me, its weight the only thing keeping me together. Then, on the 3rd dawn, I saw him. He looked wrecked, hair wild, uniform torn, eyes shadowed with exhaustion. But when his gaze found mine, it was as if the storm never happened. He came to me without hesitation, water dripping from his hair onto my cheeks when he pulled me close. "I told you," he murmured against my ear, voice ragged but steady. "I'm coming back. Always." I couldn't speak. I just held on, my fingers gripping the back of his coat as though I could anchor him to me forever. That night, we didn't talk much. We sat on the pier, shoulder to shoulder, watching the sea calm itself under the moon. Every now and then, his hand would find mine, tracing the lines of my palm like it was a map he intended to memorize. "You don't have to stay out there forever," I whispered. His jaw tightened, but there was a softness in his eyes. "Maybe I've been chasing the wrong horizon," he said. "Maybe it's been right here all along." Spring bloomed around the harbor. The water sparkled in the sun, gulls wheeled overhead, and for the first time in years, I wasn't counting the days until someone left me. Elijah started taking shorter voyages, sometimes gone only for days instead of months. One warm evening, he appeared at my door with no warning. His coat was draped over his arm, and in his other hand, a small wooden carving of a boat. "It's for you," he said, "because no matter where I go, you're my safe harbor." We walked to Pier 29, the place where it all began. The air was thick with the scent of salt and fresh rain. Elijah stood in front of me, tall and unshakable, yet his voice trembled slightly when he spoke. "I've sailed through storms thinking I'd find something worth holding on to," he said. "Turns out, I found it here, asleep on a pier, stealing my coat without asking." I laughed, the kind of laugh that starts in the chest and pushes away everything heavy. "I didn't steal it. You kept it," he said, stepping closer. "And now, I'm asking you to keep me too." When he kissed me this time, it was different from all the others. It wasn't desperate, like the night before he left, or relieved, like when he returned from the storm. It was steady, certain, the kind of kiss you give when you've made a choice and know you'll never regret it. I didn't let go. Not then. Not after. The coat is still mine. So is he. And every time the wind shifts over the harbor, I'm reminded that sometimes the sea brings you back more than you ever dared hope for. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.